check out our streaming schedule for this week. We've got tons of content in terms of the NFL and college football, as we're going live just about every single day this week. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment where we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation. I want to flash back a second to Super Bowl 52, as in the battle between the New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles. Super Bowl 52 lives on in NFL history nearly a decade later for how good it was, and rightfully so. The Philadelphia Eagles won their first Super Bowl in franchise history. Nick Foles completed his rags to riches story of going from a backup quarterback to the man who prevented the Patriots dynasty from winning another ring. And the Eagles were able to do what felt impossible just 1 month before, when Carson Wentz went down with a season-ending injury. However, of the many stories from this game, one of the most notable was who didn't play, because for whatever reason, cornerback Malcolm Butler, as in the hero at Super Bowl 49 and an AP second-team All-Pro cornerback just 1 year before, was benched, even despite Foles torching New England's pass defense all night long. To this day, no one knows why Butler didn't play in the game. All we can do is speculate, and while there are some theories out there, like an altercation with Matt Patricia, a poor effort in practice, or breaking curfew, or something more serious, we might never know the answer to this mystery. It was one of the strangest coaching decisions of Bill Belichick's legendary coaching career. And if you want to know more about some other strange moments to happen throughout the history of the NFL, then this is the place for you, because we talk about all things NFL history with a new video and a new live stream every single day. So if you like that sort of stuff, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. Most of you probably remember the Malcolm Butler benching controversy. However, I bring that up because it's not the first time that Belichick decided to bench his star player in a playoff game with no explanation whatsoever, and it ended up backfiring on him. Because 30 years ago, when the Cleveland Browns took on the Pittsburgh Steelers in the divisional round in what turned out to be Cleveland's final playoff game ever before the franchise moved to Baltimore, Belichick did something similar, where he had a Pro Bowl player on his team who figured to play a key part in the game plan, and he just decided not to use him. Because this is the story behind the divisional round controversy involving Leroy Hoard, and one of the most bizarre benchings in the history of not just the divisional round, but the history of the NFL playoffs. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to understand just who Leroy Hoard was, and how good of a player he was for the Cleveland Browns. In 1994, the Cleveland Browns did it. For the first time since Bill Belichick became the head coach of the team, and for the first time since the 1989 season, the Cleveland Browns made it to the playoffs. Now, there were quite a few reasons for this, and for why they went 11-5. They had a sensational defense that allowed just 12.8 points per game, which was the top total in football. The Browns only allowed more than 20 points in a game one time that season, and held their opponent to single digits 6 times. They had an extremely accurate kicker in Matt Stover, who led the league by hitting 93% of his field goals, which is a great percentage today, but was a sensational percentage back in 1994. And they had a great rushing attack led by this man right here, Leroy Hoard. Every time the ball was in Hoard's hands, you knew he had a chance to make something happen. Hoard finished the season with 890 rushing yards, which was the most on the team, and he also had 45 catches for 445 yards. He was a dual threat. When all was said and done, Hoard had 1,335 yards from scrimmage, making him the only player on the Browns with over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. Hoard's 9 touchdowns also led the team. For his efforts, Hoard made it to the first and the only Pro Bowl of his career, which is not too surprising that he got the nomination. We are getting over 100 yards from scrimmage in just about half your games. And after a great outing in the wildcard round against the New England Patriots, where Hoard had 91 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown in a 20-13 victory, it was time for this man that you've been watching this entire time, Leroy Hoard, to take his talents to the divisional round of the playoffs. It was going to be tough, very tough. The Steelers not only had a great defense that was second in the NFL in points allowed, and not only defeated the Browns both times the teams met during the regular season, but was very solid against the run, finishing 7th in rushing yards allowed, 4th in yards per carry allowed, and 1st in rushing touchdowns allowed. However, if anyone seemed to be up to the challenge to take on the Steelers and send the Browns to the AFC Championship for the 4th time in franchise history, and for the first time since the 1989 season, it was going to be Hoard. Even Steelers head coach Bill Cowher acknowledged that Hoard was going to be tough to stop, saying that there's no question about it. Hoard and Eric Metcalf make a good running game. However, when the game took place, it was a story of one team and one team only. Because when the final whistle sounded during this game right here, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers who completely dominated this one, taking it by a final score of 29-9 to advance to the AFC Championship for the first time since 1984, knocking the division rival Browns out of the playoffs. At no point was this game even remotely close. Pittsburgh led it 17-0 early on. The Steelers led it 27-3 after 3 quarters, and the Browns never threatened for 1 second. Pittsburgh outgained Cleveland 424-186 in total yardage, outgained them 23-10 in first downs, and outran them a whopping 238-55. When Neil O'Donnell is posting a passer rating of 122.7 against your vaunted defense, and Vinny Testaverde on the other side is throwing 2 interceptions while completing 41% of his passes, and has a passer rating barely above 40, it's not going to end well for you. On this day at Three River Stadium, the Steelers completed the series sweep of the Browns, beating them 3 times in one season. Pure and utter domination. But as you're watching these highlights of the game, or should I say, lowlights of the game if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, you might notice something a bit odd and notice something that feels off. And that is the fact that Leroy Hoard doesn't appear. I wasn't even born yet, and I made about as much of a contribution on this day as Leroy Hoard did. And it's not because the Steelers stuffed Hoard, or Hoard got injured, or anything along those lines. It was because Leroy Hoard, for some bizarre reason, didn't play. Plain and simple, he didn't play. He had 3 carries for 8 yards and 1 catch for 5 yards. 4 touches for a Pro Bowl running back. 4 touches for the leading yards getter and touchdown getter on the team. 4 touches for the man who helped get the Browns to this point. Leroy Hoard didn't get a single touch in the second half, was barely featured in the first half, and got awfully comfortable riding the bench. As Cleveland's season was slowly but surely slipping away, Leroy Hoard didn't get to do anything about it, because for some bizarre reason, he was on the bench. Which raises the obvious question. Why was Hoard benched? No one seemed to know why Hoard didn't play, especially seeing as Hoard not only had no idea, but he wasn't even told by a coach that he was being benched. There was no communication about this situation whatsoever, adding to the mystery of whatever the heck the strategy was during a playoff game. And after the game, you can bet that Hoard was fuming and was upset about the entire situation. You're telling me that I'm a Pro Bowl running back, and I don't feature at all during this game, and I receive no explanation as to why that's the case? As Hoard said on the entire situation as to why I didn't play, don't ask me. I didn't even find out I wasn't starting until the offense ran on the field and my butt was stuck on the bench. No one said a thing to me. No one. A coach didn't talk to me all game. As he continued, how am I supposed to deal with this? After working so hard to get the team this far, and then to be treated like this? How do you think I feel? All Belichick had to say about the situation was that Hoard didn't play a lot because in the second half, the Browns were down by 21, so you couldn't really run the ball. And Ernest Spiner was a better receiving back than Hoard, which is sort of crazy already, seeing as Hoard had 45 catches for 445 yards in 1994, and Biner had 11 catches for 102 yards. So one was clearly better than the other. And one of the games that the Browns won was against the Indianapolis Colts, when late in the fourth quarter, Leroy Hoard scored a very long 60-plus yard receiving touchdown with very little time left. Yeah, I don't buy that explanation one bit. And while Hoard acknowledged that maybe, by some weird explanation and by some weird metric, Biner was the better receiving back, He also said, that explains the second half, but not the first half. Listen, he can use that thing about me and practice all he wants. He can say it every week if that's what he wants to say. I have nothing against Ernest Biner, but them keeping me out for the whole game? I just don't understand it. It's too late to talk about it now. This is the end of the season, so you tell me what I'm supposed to think. All I know is that this is something to think about. How would you like to be taken out in the biggest game of your life, and no one even tells you why? And yes, Belichick said that something happened in practice, but he also said that last week in the wildcard round against the New England Patriots, and Hoard played a lot in that one. On top of that, there was no indication whatsoever outside of what Belichick said that there was anything that happened. He never clarified the situation. No players said so, no other reporters said so, and even Hoard seems to have no idea what Belichick was referring to with that. So who knows how true that is? And even if that was true, and we assume that Hoard decided to fight every single player in practice and take a dump on the coach's lunches or something and poison Bill Belichick's drink supply, to not even tell Hoard that he's not playing? To just relegate your star players on the bench and not even tell him anything? That's just wrong, no matter how you slice it. The point is that if you were this man right here in Bill Belichick, you had a Pro Bowl running back available at your disposal, a back who started just about every game this season, and an awfully good back who played a massive part in the team's win the previous week of the wildcard round. And you're not going to use him at all, to the point where he finishes the game with 13 yards from scrimmage, which was, by far I might add, his worst output of the season? It's one of those things where if you win the game, you're a genius. And if you lose the game, you're going to be questioned to the high heavens. And Belichick was absolutely questioned for this one. Not just for doing this, but for how he went about this. As for what happened after the playoff game between these two teams behind me right here, Leroy Hoard would get a lot more chances to do something in the postseason and in the divisional round of the playoffs. Granted, none of those opportunities came with the Cleveland Browns, but when he did play later on in the decade with the Minnesota Vikings, he played in a lot of playoff games and did some nice things, including a 3-touchdown performance in the 1998 divisional, which was a 41-21 win over the Arizona Cardinals. As for Bill Belichick, well, even though this wasn't his best game, he coached about 20,000 playoff games after this, so I think this is a distant memory for him. I've seen interviews with this man right here in Leroy Hoard where he talks glowingly of Bill Belichick, so we might never know the answer as to why he got benched. Hoard seems to think highly of arguably the greatest coach in the history of the NFL, and it's either water under the bridge and a distant memory, or Hoard doesn't want to reignite the flame. Heck, he re-signed with the Browns in 1995 and Belichick was there, so who knows? Regardless, it does feel rather insane that a Pro Bowl running back just gets benched and there's no explanation for it whatsoever prior to the team's biggest game of the season and one of the biggest games in franchise history. Imagine if no one told Kyron Williams that he was getting benched prior to Sunday's game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Rams get blown out. Well, that's sort of what happened here. Bill Belichick's head coaching career is fascinating, and he's made a lot of controversial decisions, with some working out and some absolutely not working out. And this was definitely one of the latter, not just with the decision itself, but with the way Hoard was treated during the game. Because during the 1994 playoffs, Leroy Hoard wasn't hoarding the football. Instead, he was hoarding time on the bench. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.